Former President Donald Trump recently gave a speech. It's actually his first big speech of the new year. Yes, he was in Arizona, of all places, giving what was essentially a campaign speech. And so now in it, so look, recently we've kind of given a little bit of credit for Donald Trump for coming out and saying, hey, you should probably get the vaccine good. In fact, I got vaccine, I got vaccinated, I got boosted, and you should probably do so too. But I'm also against mandates because mandates bad, right? So now he's got an interesting new narrative about the vaccine, which is still pro-vaccine, but is now feeding into the white victimhood narrative that MAGA absolutely loves. And so let me give you that.
The left is now rationing life-saving therapeutics based on race, discriminating against and denigrating, just denigrating white people to determine who lives and who dies. If you're white, you don't get the vaccine, or if you're white, you don't get therapeutics. It's unbelievable to think this. And nobody wants this. Black people don't want it. White people don't want it. Nobody wants it. It's not even believable. You saw this a week ago where it came out. Nobody can even believe it. They don't even talk about it, and they don't want to talk about it because they know it doesn't work very well for them. But the Wall Street Journal described the practice race-based preferential COVID treatments, and that's what it is. You get it based on race. In fact, in New York State, if you're white, you have to go to the back of the line to get medical help. Think of it. If you're white, you go right to the back of the line.
What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what? If you're white, you have to go back to the line for vaccines. Really? Really? I mean, I find that incredibly hard to believe. He himself, he said, oh, it's so unbelievable. You're right, because I don't believe it. Because it's not true. It's not true. All right, so look, and by the way, it's because we have lots of vaccine. We have a ton of vaccine in this country. If you're talking about other countries, well, I mean, other countries don't have a lot of vaccine, but we've got a lot of vaccine here. We've got tons of it. In fact, there's enough for everybody to get it. Look, here's the thing. I've waited probably about 10 to 15 minutes personally for my own booster. Oh, but I was in line. Yeah, behind two white people. So, I mean, come on. It's actually really, really easy to get your vaccine or your booster. And look, I don't live in New York, but I'm pretty sure just about everybody in this country who wants to be vaccinated has had at least one shot, if not more. So now that leaves people who, and look, there's basically two groups here that are left. There's the people that either have chosen not to vaccinate, which happens to be the majority of MAGA, or there are still people that with limited mobility and with limited means who can't really get to the vaccination sites. So, the vaccine outreach and things like that for people who are poor, who do not have access to those means, that is something that, look, we still need to deal with. We still need to make sure that vaccines, if you can't go to the vaccine, well, then the vaccine should absolutely come to you. And so I think that's very, very important. Now, again, I said that there were two groups. There's actually about three groups, honestly. And there is a group of people, especially the African-American community and the Hispanic community, that are also vaccine hesitant. So now I don't include them with the chuds, because the chuds they're chuds, for one, and they believe in insane, ridiculous things. QAnon, the vaccine will make your head explode after you become magnetic. I mean, just the most ridiculous things. But there are actually people in this country, African American or Latino, that don't, for legitimate reasons, have a trust in vaccines and, of course, the government and institutions. And I can understand that. But before I get to that, let me just go through the policy here in New York. Now, that policy states that non-white race or Hispanic Latino ethnicity should be considered a risk due to long-standing systemic health and social inequities that increase the risk of severe illness and death from COVID-19. The guidelines come after the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that Hispanic and Latino people are 2.1 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than white people. Black people are 1.9 times more likely to succumb to the virus. And so, now again, that doesn't say, hey, if you're white, go to the back of the line. That doesn't say that if you're white, you don't get treatment. No, that's ridiculous. It doesn't say anything about this. It basically says, hey, we should consider them a higher risk factor. And so, try to get them in and convince them to become vaccinated to protect them from COVID-19. That's really all it is. So now, here's the thing. Those numbers are devastating, and there's reasons for it. Now, African Americans are more likely to die at early ages for all causes, as young African Americans are living with diseases that are typically more common at older ages for other races. For example, high blood pressure, common in 12% versus 10% of blacks versus white aged 18 to 34 years, respectively. It is also common in 33% versus 22% of those aged 35 to 49 years, respectively. So again, a higher risk of high blood pressure. Diabetes is common in 10% of black people aged 35 to 49 compared to just 6% of white people. So now, again, these are health issues, and a lot of these health issues are born out of socioeconomic factors. For example, unemployment, poverty, unaffordable healthcare, racism inside the healthcare industry. In fact, 20% of African Americans are more likely to report psychological distress, and yet are 50% less likely to receive counseling or mental health treatment due to these underlined socioeconomic factors. Meaning, you can't really go and get treatment for depression, anxiety, etc., different psychological factors if you don't have money. And that is where this country has absolutely failed. One of the ways this country has failed when it comes to healthcare. Again, I'll talk about how to fix that, but it just shows that being poor in this country, and you are more likely, unfortunately, to be in poverty if you are a minority in this country. It's almost as if being poor and not being able to afford health insurance or health care, or, even good food, clean water, now that leads to incredibly poor health outcomes. Now, we can solve this problem by expanding Medicare to everyone and expanding it, increasing the amount of things that it covers, like preventative health care, for example, guaranteeing life-saving medications. We can eliminate food deserts as well by expanding the choices for people in inner city areas, providing fresh markets. Imagine fresh fruits and vegetable markets inside of inner cities that are accessible and cheap. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That would help a lot. But they don't want to do that. Now, there's more. The CDC has also found that certain ethnic and racial minority groups are less likely to receive outpatient antiviral treatment than white people. Now, that's the other thing that they're talking about, right? So Trump's like, oh, no, we're being the ones that are being denied antiviral treatment for COVID-19. I can't believe they just dried up the supply of Regeneron. That's what happened. And so white people can't get Regeneron. Well, why don't white people just get vaccinated so they don't need Regeneron? Besides, the Regeneron treatments don't work against the Omicron variant, which is now the dominant variant in the United States for COVID. Now, but there's more. Vaccination. In nearly half of U.S. states, Black and Hispanic vaccination rates have lagged behind white ones by at least 10 percentage points or more, according to Bloomberg. So now there is vaccine hesitancy within the Black community. Now, I think that's wrong. I think they're wrong to be hesitant, but I also understand why. Because they've got some good reasons. The government has had in the past lied. They've ran experiments. For example, the Tuskegee experiment in Alabama, where they allowed, hundreds of Black men to get syphilis and then go. They promised treatment, and then they refused to treat them, and then studied the symptoms and studied what happened. A lot of people, again, died or went blind or had other issues. And they just allowed it to happen while studying them like they were guinea pigs. That's horrifying. Now, you also had issues where, for example, Henrietta Lacks, she had cancer. Her cancer cells were used for medical research without her or her family's knowledge or permission, and without any sort of financial compensation. They used her as a guinea pig. And so I understand where this hesitancy comes from. I mean, you combine an earned lack of trust in institutions among some of the Black community and the copious amount of vaccine disinformation that has blanketed the airwaves from grifters, and you can see why there's an issue with hesitancy among some of the people in these groups. Whereas, of course, when you look at the far right, the vaccine has become part of the culture wars. And, where some would rather drink their pee than get a vaccine that is free. It's insane. So now the whole purpose, as I said, of this policy is to ensure that Black people who are more at risk get an opportunity to get the vaccine. This isn't discrimination. This is public health. That's all it is. But see, understand that the right wing is so hungry to be victims. They can't wait. They can't wait to be victims. They have to be the victims. Donald Trump coming out there, I can't believe white people are being discriminated against when it comes to vaccines, which is not true at all. Now, the irony here, of course, is that many of them don't want the vaccine, which I pointed out. There's a lot of MAGA supporters are like, no, I'll never get the vaccine. I'll never, ever get the vaccine. I will never do that. No. So again, they're super hungry for it. They want it. They want to be victimized so badly. They can't help it. They can't help it. So now, here's the other thing, right? Now, what if, by some odd miracle, Trump ends up doing something positive from saying this, from casting this? I can't believe Black people are now going to get the vaccine over white people. We're being discriminated. We're being discriminated against. The most horrible thing. I couldn't believe it. What if that spurs white people, MAGA, to go and get vaccinated? Oh, yeah. You know what? Donald Trump's right. I'm being discriminated against. That's why I should get my vaccine. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, sure. Go ahead and use the victimhood narrative as long as you get the vaccine. That's all I care about. Just go and get the vaccine. It's fine. The more people that are vaccinated, the better off we all are.